This is kind of spoilers for my end of year wrap up whenever that comes out, but some of my favorite books of the year were the Neapolitan novels by Elena Ferrante, at least the last three because I read those this year. I read My Brilliant Friend the previous year. I just love those books, and there is so much to talk about. The little details that Ferrante sprinkles in that somehow circle back and become these huge mountainous things in the story. Those books are just genius, in my opinion. Not only was reading them amazing, also getting to discuss the books with my fiancé was such a special thing. In today's vlogmas, I wanted to talk about our partners or people who are close to us that we share this love of reading with. How amazing it is to be able to talk to someone about the books that you read. I guess especially with my fiancé, because we are in a relationship, we're gonna get married. It's really fun to be able to share the thing that I love most in the world with him. Yeah, we've had so many conversations about Elena Ferrante's books, and just the other day we were talking about the last book in the series, and we were talking about the significance of the titles in those books and how the fact that they're a series at all, how important it is and how interesting it is that they're a series despite the fact that in the literary world there's such a stigma surrounding series. It's really lovely, and we've sort of created a personal canon of books that we both love and adore and have influenced each other's reading in really interesting ways. So today I thought I would highlight some of the books that I've read over the years that I read because of my fiancé. These are books that some of them I probably would have read eventually, but I read them at a specific time because of him. Other books would have never read these books, honestly. I would really love to know in the comments down below if you have any relationships like this in your life where that person, maybe it's a sibling or a parent that you share reading with, who influences your reading, and you have these sort of books that you've both read that you refer back to, that you both love, someone who just understands you as a reader. You know what? This is the internet, so maybe you have an internet friend over Discord or over YouTube or over Instagram or TikTok that shares your same taste in reading, or maybe, you have a little bit of overlap. It's like a Venn diagram of your tastes, and there's this really lovely exchange that you have with that person. Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear about it. So, the first book I want to talk about is The World According to Garp by John Irving. This is a book that I read because of my fiancé, and it is probably the most controversial book that we've both read to this day because he loves it. And I, on the other hand, found the experience of reading The World According to Garp really frustrating, and I think part of it was that the book is described as a feminist story. I think that I had certain expectations of where the story would go. To this day, I feel like I don't understand that book. But at the same time, I'm really glad that I read it because I would have never read John Irving otherwise. I recently talked about how sometimes I like to make myself read books that I don't particularly enjoy because I get something else out of that experience that's not just pure entertainment. The World According to Garp was definitely one of those books, and if you've read that book, I would really love to hear your perspective on it. Without getting into spoilers, I just felt like, especially Garp's wife, I felt like her portrayal was so unfair. That was definitely a book where we both were talking about it, and the conversations that we had were really, really fruitful. Generally, Nat and I tend to have really similar taste. It really stands out as an outlier. Two stories, I guess I'll call them, that I want to highlight are Age of Bronze and Beowulf. These are both sort of classic texts I myself am not super familiar with. Nat has a minor in classics, and so I feel like I've started to become really influenced by him to read more things like the Iliad, and we buddy read Beowulf a while ago, very early on in our relationship, and I loved it. It was fantastic, and it was really interesting to see the myth of Beowulf and the story because it's so influential, and there were kernels in that story that I see in the fantasy books that I love to read now, and so it was just really fascinating to read that together. He was, I think, taking a class about it at the time, and he was just able to sort of relay that information to me. And I've said on this channel before, but when I went to college, I really only took engineering classes, and I took general education requirements that you're supposed to take in college. But because of my high school AP credits, I basically tested out of having to take English classes in college. And one of my biggest regrets is not just taking those classes anyways. So that's something I really missed out on. And I get to sort of live vicariously through Nat and his classics minor, and he also has an English minor as well. Age of Bronze, on the other hand, is actually a graphic novel. Nat and I ended up buddy reading it together, and it's a graphic novelization of the story of the Iliad. Unfortunately, it's unfinished. Art in that graphic novel is so cinematic. It truly reads like you're watching a movie. It's so good. One of our best buddy reads, I will say, is Emma by Jane Austen. Nat took a class where he read through almost all of Austen's work, and Emma was the only one that he hadn't read, so he invited me to buddy read it with him. And I love Emma. It was such a charming little story. Her general sort of like meddling personality and just the quaintness of her life, where she lives with her dad and they have balls, you know, she just like is trying to matchmake everyone. It was really fun to read it with Nat. He keeps telling me that I'm gonna love Mansfield Park because I'm such a huge Jane Eyre fan. Maybe I'll get him to reread it with me and we can do another Austen buddy read at some point. But myself, I've only read Emma and Pride and Prejudice from Jane Austen, and it is her 250th birthday, so I should add some Austen to my TBR sooner rather than later. But I love Emma. It was such a sweet story. We need to watch the movie as well. And then this year I read The God Is Not Willing because of Nat. Partially it was also Andy Smith and I were going to do a discussion, but Nat had been telling me from 2021 when we started dating that I was gonna love The God Is Not Willing. So I also give him credit for finally getting me to read it. Another book I read this year because of my fiancé is The Will of the Many. I generally tend to stay away from like really, really popular fantasy releases just because I get intimidated and I'm like, I don't want to be part of the crowd. That's like the contrarian in me, but Nat really loves Roman and Greek history, so he was very piqued by The Will of the Many and he read it, and yeah, he said it was really good. So I tried it out. I loved it. It definitely achieves what it sets out to do, and I don't know, it reminded me of reading The Hunger Games. Islington did a great job of maintaining tension and just upping the ante with each chapter and sprinkling little reveals here and there, and the Roman setting I feel like worked really well for me. In terms of the character and the character relationships and the overarching plot, a fun book to read and talk to with each other, especially because the ending is so bombastic. He's already read Strength of the Few. I'm excited to read it and discuss it with him soon. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below. What's a book that you read because of a friend or your partner that you would have never read unless they had recommended it and you ended up really liking it, or it ended up being a really interesting discussion for you two? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video.